Hello everyone and welcome to Artha Point CUT MA English Preparation. Today we would be talking about a very new section, a very new uh, part in the history of English literature, that is the age of revival. Right? We have already spoken about the age of Chaucer, we have spoken about the Anglo-Saxons, the Anglo-Normans, and this particular video we would be discussing about a complete transition from the Old English era to this medieval literature that would further move on and change into what we know as modern English. Now, we already know that we had Normans, then we had the Saxons, and then we had Chaucer. The age of Chaucer that removed the French focus, the French taste that was already existing during the Saxons period, during the Normans period, and this period of age of Chaucer brought a transition from French, from Latin to English. Right? And Chaucer was first to give more importance to English than to French and Latin. We have already discussed the conditions, the socio-political conditions that were existing in the age of Chaucer. Now, it is very important for you to understand this in a very chronological manner. Right? When you understand each and every part in history of literature chronologically, you would be, first, it would be very easy for you to understand what the main writers, what the main poets were going through, and the same reflecting in their works, definitely. Second, it comes out as a very beautiful story about the history of English literature, and it becomes very easy for you to memorize, right? So that is why I am posting all the videos in the history of literature chronologically, so that you can understand where we are standing right now, what has happened in the past, and what does the future look. Now, age of revival, one of the most important ages that is there, because during this period, people, their thoughts, their literacy level, everything was changing. Everything was rapidly moving in the age of revival, right? There were protests happening, there were religious movements happening, there were literary movements happening, and all this put together was shaping what the literature was, and how it was being produced was also changing. What writers and what the poets were writing was continuously evolving, right? So before getting into some particular writers, some particular poets of the era, in this particular video, we would understand the socio-political conditions, the religious condition of the society, right? Now, though not a lot of questions are asked from here, just two, three questions are asked from the socio-political conditions of the age of revival, but it is very important for us to understand as to where do we stand, right? Now, so there were a lot of things happening, as I have told you earlier. We would be focusing on some particular reforms, some particular changes that happened during this period. And one of them was the arrival of printing press, right? There are few points that you must remember. That printing press was brought by John Gutenberg in 1450 in Europe, and this later went on to England in 1476, and this was brought by William Caxton. So these are certain points that you must remember when we talk of the printing press and its arrival. Now, one thing that you must understand, that till now, throughout Europe, printing was extremely expensive, right? So printing was not something that it is today. It is cheap, right? At that particular time, printing was extremely expensive and it was censored, right? So because it was expensive, not a lot of texts were being produced, And the complete literacy, the complete power was with the clergy, right? We have already seen in the age of Chaucer that it was the clergy who, so people were slowly and steadily, of course, in the age of Chaucer, we saw that the Bible was being translated, the works were being translated from Latin and French, but still the literacy was with the upper class, right? Now, with now there was what was earlier, there was wood block printed that existed. So what we had was wood block printing, right? Now what was wood block printing? So under this wood block printing, there was a big sheet of paper that was attached to two ends of wood, and this particular paper used to act as a stamp, right? So it became extremely expensive because this was one sheet of paper, then you had to print it like this, then another sheet of paper. So it was extremely expensive, right? Now Johannes Gutenberg, he was the one who started a different type of printing. In 1450, he used the principle of assembling these tiny movable objects in order to start printing. So most of you must have seen a typewriter, right? When we talk of a typewriter, there are alphabets that are very tiny alphabets that are movable and that are separate from each other. So the basic principle was the same, right? And this was further taken by William Caxton, and he brought printing to England in 1476. Now, we have already spoken about that printing is now available. How did it improve the condition? How did it bring more changes, the socio-economic changes? The very first point when we talk about the arrival of printing press is that the very first thing is that it helped in debates of Reformation. So what was happening is printing became cheap, right? So pamphlets were being printed, prose were being printed, right? So printing was rapid. People were understanding what went wrong in the earlier ages, and there was a lot of debate of Reformation. And second is increase in literacy, right? Now, of course, because the texts became more accessible to the common people, people were more interested in reading than listening from some clergy, listening it from some church. So literacy was at peak, literacy was spreading, and these are the two major changes that were brought by the arrival of printing press. I hope I am clear till now. Let us move on to the next. Okay, so we also have a CUET question here. So this is a past year question, right? Who brought printing press to England? We have already seen that in Europe it was brought by Johannes Gutenberg, and in England it was brought by William Caxton in the year 1476, right? Let us move on to the major part of this age of revival, that is Reformation, right? Now, what is Reformation? In easier terms, Reformation is a religious movement, right? Let us understand it from the very basics, right? So so earlier, let us begin from Saxons, right? Saxons were the people who were majorly pagan in nature. Now, what was paganism? We have already discussed in, I think, the very first lecture. Paganism was where people had no god, right? They worshipped nature. They have a poetry about nature. They adored the beauty of sky. They loved trees. They worshipped trees. They worshipped stars. So everything was around nature, right? Then came the Normans, right? Normans came from the French. So Normans came from France, right? They adapted the French culture and they brought this French culture to Europe, right? Now, they were the people who rampantly spread Christianity amongst the Europeans, right? So the apostles, that are the followers of the Christ, they came and they started spreading Christianity as well, right? So now there were a lot of churches that were set up, right? There were clergymen. People were it was just the clergies who were telling what is it like to be a good Christian. What does the Bible say? There was no understanding at all amongst the common people except for what the clergy told them and what the church told them, right? Now, then we saw that what happened was the age of Chaucer. During the age of Chaucer, we have already seen what happened was the war. War took place. What happened? The plague took place. And slowly and steadily, people and their belief in this church, their belief in this setup of clergy, it was slowly eroding. People started believing that probably what was being told to us till date, it wasn't true at all. The church was making them fools, right? So they believed that there was this transition that was happening, especially during the plague, the Black Death. People started believing that what is the benefit of believing in God? What is the benefit of believing in this church? What is the benefit of believing in these authorities when during the Black Death, nobody could save them, right? So what was the purpose of God? People started questioning. And this became the very basis, this questioning became the very basis of the age of revival, of the age of Reformation, right? So now when we talk of the social situation, it was divided into three parts. There were Christians, there were Protestants, and third were the Calvinism, right? We have already discussed who were the Christians. These were the apostles, the followers of the Christ, right? Then came the Protestants. Now you must remember a very important person when we speak of Protestants. That is Martin Luther. Who was Martin Luther? So Protestant Reformation was a movement against Catholicism. This was led by Martin Luther, right? Martin Luther was a German monk. He said that this very setup of clergy is all false. He saw that the clergy were demanding money from the common people because they said that you give us money and we will help you get rid of all your sins. So this was the case that was happening in this particular situation. So he believed that everybody should not just listen Bible, but everybody should read Bible. Everybody should understand their own religion. Everybody should have their own belief. So that is what Martin Luther made everybody understand. So Martin Luther also wrote a 95 thesis. So this 95 thesis was 95 points, and he bolted it, this particular 95 points to a church, right? Now, he basically told everybody this was a major base that held in this Reformation, because this particular thesis told everybody as to what all was happening in the church, what wrong was happening in the church. अब of course आप एक चर्च में जाओ या आपको कोई पंडित जब बोलता है फॉर एग्जाम्पल, और कोई भी फॉर दैट मैटर एनी रिलीजियस फिगर आपको ये बोलता है कि तुम मुझको पैसे दो, मैं तुम्हारे सारे बुरे काम मिटा दूंगा, right? Of course you would not believe in this person. सो मार्टिन लूथर का बेसिक टॉपिक ऑफ डिस्कशन, मार्टिन लूथर का बेसिक अंडरस्टैंडिंग यही था टू मेक पीपल अंडरस्टैंड कि कैसे क्लर्जी आपको फूल बना रहे हैं, कैसे क्लर्जी सिर्फ मनी के लिए क्राइस्ट को यूज कर रहे हैं, क्रिश्चियनिटी को बदनाम कर रहे हैं. दिस इज व्हाट मार्टिन लूथर टोल्ड एवरीबॉडी. एंड ये पर्टिकुलर 95 थीसिस जो मार्टिन लूथर ने कैसल चर्च इन जर्मन के दरवाजे पर लगाया, उसकी वजह से रेफॉर्मेशन और स्पीड से लोगों में बढ़ा, उसकी वजह से प्रोटेस्टेंट्स की तादाद और बढ़ी. राइट. Next, we have Calvinism. So, Calvinism is nothing different. Calvinism is similar to Protestants, but this was started by John Calvin in Germany. Right? उन्होंने जॉन कैल्विन ने बोलते ना कि प्रेरणा ली फ्रॉम मार्टिन लूथर, एंड इन ही स्टार्टेड दिस पर्टिकुलर Reformation in German, and the followers of John Calvin were called, so the followers and the Reformation that he brought was called Calvinism. Right. Sorry, this one mistake here. This was not brought in German. This was started in Switzerland. Right. Let us move on. So we have two CUET questions here. Very first is Reformation was predominantly a movement in. So we have already discussed that Reformation was a movement in religion. And second is religious controversies in England, particularly in the 15th century, led to the promotion of. So religious controversies in England, particularly in 15th century, led to the promotion of prose. This is very, very important for you to understand. Till date, till the age of Chaucer, it was poetry that existed. Right? People were writing poetries, people were spreading poetries, it was easy to understand, English was not developed till then. Using alliteration, using rhyme schemes, it was easier to spread. People used to hear from one and say, just spread it. It was a word of mouth game and it used to spread it. Now printing developed, right? People were angry, people were anxious, people were questioning. Now poetry was very beautiful form, right? Poetry still is a very, very beautiful form. That anger, that anxiousness was, the people would not be able to, so basically people were not able to tell their anger, they were not able to translate their anger in the form of a poetry, and therefore prose became very famous, right? Prose came into being. Right? So this is a very, very important question, a very important thing for you to understand. And remember that prose began in the age of revival. This was a major part of the Reformation. Right? Now we have seen what was happening in Europe. Let us now come to England. Right? What was happening in England? In England, there was War of Roses. Very important. Right. Now, let us understand this particular War of Roses with help of our own country, that is India, right? India is a democratic country, right? So, had it been a monarchy, तो आपकी दो पार्टीज अगर हम लेते हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल बीजेपी एंड लेट अस टेक कांग्रेस, राइट? अब अगर दोनों ही मोनार्क्स होते तो क्या होता? बोथ वुड हैव फॉट कि किसका पावर रहेगा, राइट? जैसे हमने पास्ट में देखा है, जैसे हमने थ्रू आउट आवर हिस्ट्री ऑफ इंडिया में देखा है कि दिस पावर बैटल एग्जिस्टेड. Similar was the case in the War of Roses. There were two monarch families that existed in England. First was the House of York. Second was the House of Lancaster or Lanchester. Right? ये दो बड़े बड़े मोनार्क हाउसेस थे जिनमें एक कांस्टेंट बैटल था, एक वॉर था एज टू who would rule over England. Right. Now, why is it called War of Roses? Because of their emblems. So, House of York had a white rose as their emblem, and House of Lancaster had red rose as their emblem. Right. And therefore, this is called as the War of Roses. Now, this War of Roses was there from 1455 to 85. Right. Now, this becomes very interesting as we proceed further, because these were a series of civil wars that were happening in England, right? So in Shakespeare's Henry V, there's a very interesting scene that is presented wherein all the members of the court are asked to choose their own roses. So if anybody picks a red rose, that would mean they support the House of Lancaster. If they would pick a white rose, it means they are choosing the House of York. Right. Now, what happened was neither of the two houses won. Now, why did that happen? So, Lanchesters and आपके Yorks ने fight किया, दोनों ही नहीं जीते because of Henry the Seventh. Now, Henry the Seventh, what did he do? He belonged. So he was a distant cousin of the Lanchesters, and he married a daughter from the House of York, right? So basically, एक Lanchester ने एक York से शादी करी, and a completely new dynasty came into being, that is the Tudor dynasty, right? अब Tudor dynasty ना तो York थी, ना वो Lancaster थी. Tudor dynasty was a culmination of both, right? Because we had Henry VII from Lancaster family, we had the girl from the York family, both married, and he became a Tudor king, right? So then we have a very interesting kings in this age of revival. We have Henry VIII, who had 6 wives. We have Edward VI, who died very young. We also have, and eventually we have our 2 prominent female monarchs, that is Queen Mary, also known as Bloody Mary, and we have Elizabeth the first queen, the first virgin queen that started the golden era of England, right? Now with this, I would like to end this session. We have discussed what was happening in Europe, what was happening in England, what gave rise to the age of Reformation. In the next video, we would be talking about these 4 most important people in the history of England, and we would move forward and discuss about the writers, the poets, most prominent works, and the most prominent works in the age of revival. With this, I would like to end this session. Thank you. Take care. For a full in-depth session, you can reach us out at 83686-63950. Also, if you have any doubts, if you have any queries, you can put it down in the comment section below. Till then, take care. All the best.